Okay, good afternoon. We'll start this off in a second. I'm going to save you some pain. I'm not going to read the bio. I'm going to assume people have read the bio, and I'm going to assume that you're wondering why, well, at least one of these people up here, why he's going to be able to talk about maritime, unmanned, underwater stuff. And I'm going to tell you why he can in just a second. Admiral Jimmy Pitts is wearing a uniform. He's got submarine dolphins on. He's got underwater credentials. He's proved that over the years. Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Frank Kelley. He's got a Marine background, aviator. Where do we draw the lines there? Okay. He's got 6 children. He has 6 children. 4 of them are quadruplets. 2 of them are in the Merchant Marine Academy, and one's at the Naval Academy. I think that speaks for itself. We're ready to go. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
All right, so that whole kid thing, I did it by myself, of course. And I saw one lady with her mouth open wide when she heard quad, so we all know that I married up, and so I think that was almost an attack on my credibility here. So I really got I got to step it up quite a bit. You know, Don McCormick, I don't know. I think Don had to leave real quick. But if Don's going to defend the bureaucracy, I'll tell you what, I'll defend Don McCormick, and probably one of the most important guys I've had a chance to meet in this job, and really appreciate the relationship that we've had with Don McCormick. Chris is an intern in the back doing cyber stuff. He is not mine, by the way. He was given to me today, right now, as a former Marine general officer. When you know, you get smart young people, you take advantage of them. So it's going to sound like I'm terribly rude. I might yell at Chris a couple of times to get on with the slides, okay? Just we've already worked this out. So Chris, next. All right, there we go. Okay, so hey, this unmanned thing, we have been thinking about this for quite some time. And what I want you to take a look at on that slide is a piece of legislation that came out in 2001 that said by 2010, 1/3 of all aircraft in the operational deep strike mission will be unmanned, and by 2015, 1/3 of all operational ground combat vehicles will be unmanned. And I'd look out at the audience and I'd ask you, how are we doing? Okay, this unmanned thing is not an overnight success. It's not an overnight kind of wonder. We have been doing this for a long time, and I even think that Don sort of mentioned that. If you take a look back over since 1985, when Don said he came in. By the way, I think we should check that out. By the way, I don't think that that's true. I'd say more like 75 probably. But, so there it is, public law. We always obey the law. Didn't happen. And what's missing? Something that I think is really important here, particularly on our naval services, right? Didn't say anything about surface craft, and it certainly didn't say anything about stuff that was going to happen under the water. Next, Chris. Okay, but here's something that did get us very excited, and this is on 11 July, when now Richard Spencer, who is our Secretary of the Navy, when asked about the 355-ship Navy, said, well, you know, I'm not exactly sure if I can tell you what the 355-ship Navy looks like, but I think I can describe what the capability of that is. And part of that capability is going to be provided by unmanned systems. And in particular, our Secretary of the Navy now, Richard Spencer, talked about the surface and unmanned underwater vehicle contribution to that capability. Next, Chris. Okay, so we've gone from like, what kind of a mix are we going to have between certain types of vehicles, and what's the mix going to be in unmanned vehicles to manned vehicles? I'm going to tell you, this picture right here inspires the hell out of me. And so here we have a Hornet, and here we have the X-47B, which we heard a lot about this morning. That is a spectacular looking aircraft. And I bet you we've got some Hornet drivers in the audience that are trying to, which one is the spectacular looking aircraft, Frank? Well, I'm telling you right now, since I'm retired and will no longer fly an mighty E-6B, it's the one closest to me on the flight deck. But I'm going to tell you right now, the Navy cares about this kind of stuff. No matter what you may have heard, the Navy cares about this. And it's not just doing the platforms, it's what is the right mix between our manned aircraft and our unmanned aircraft, our manned ships and our unmanned ships that are out there, our submarines and our UUVs. And that's part of the testing and demonstration that we've already exhibited. When I look at that, I see commitment. And oh, by the way, I was actually on that carrier. That was a Teddy Roosevelt. They were doing cats and traps out there. They wanted to see how the X-47 was going to perform in the pattern with a couple of test pilots flying Legacy Hornets and Super Hornets out there. And I'll tell you, obviously they all did great, but the X-47B did not stretch the pattern out. It didn't affect the pattern in any way. So it was a marvelous demonstration of just how quickly the Navy can turn this into doing business in a standard way. It was a remarkable day. I was out there with a couple of good friends of mine. It was a Sunday afternoon. It was August 17th, 2014. I know somebody's going to check me on that. Anyway, great day out there on the Teddy Roosevelt. Now I want you to watch this movie a little carefully. Okay, this is a thrilling Google search, okay, for you. Now don't hit it yet, Chris, okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to watch what gets typed into the search bar, and then I want you to watch what Google says you should pay attention to, okay? So now go ahead, Chris, hit it. Okay. Now, that's a bummer right there. Now, if you notice in the search bar when it was all happening, lots of things kind of popped up. One of them was the Navy Unmanned Systems Roadmap. I was thrilled by that, and I thought, okay, we're in. Didn't happen. This is what we get. No, by the way, this is a below and head work for you aviators out there. You know that that's not a good thing, right? Because my good friend Chris Del Mastro over here, we actually did that search in public with some people that we wanted to help us out. And that's, you really ought to rehearse this stuff, you know, before you do it. But all is not lost. I think if you look at that middle one, Unmanned Systems at Navy.com, that's actually a tremendously good website. Small tactical unmanned aircraft systems and Navy unmanned startups inside unmanned systems was actually a story that was written about our DASN unmanned office, and I was really proud of the way that was written. Okay, Chris. So if the thing that I wish that had popped up would have been this right here. And I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of pressure on the unmanned community within the Department of the Navy. And I mean, because it's new, it's exciting, it is going to be a challenging environment. So I had these two pictures, and I asked my guys, I said, what do you think about these two pictures? If I told you to take all the stuff off your desk, just leave a piece of paper out there and a pencil, okay, write me a little story, okay? And that's not a challenge between these two aircraft, by the way. There's no challenge out there at all. This is all about capability. And I can tell you the one thing that I know that is going to assure us success in the future is that the crews on that flight deck that you see there, they will make this happen. As a matter of fact, the young people that are out on that flight deck out there that launched a Hornet and then turned it right back around and then launched a completely unmanned autonomous vehicle off that carrier deck, they turned it into business as usual. That's the fight, that's the Navy they expect to participate in the future. And I mean, it was just a staggering event. I mean, they did not miss a beat, and it was just absolutely fantastic. So you can be very, very proud of our young sailors and Marines. The Navy that they expected to come into was one where we're using unmanned systems together with manned systems in the future. Terribly exciting day. Okay, next, Chris. Okay, now, what do our sailors and Marines also know? It is going to be a dangerous world. We heard about this already today. So check out this story, New York Times, July 20th, a couple of days after Secretary Spencer gets confirmed. China laid out a development plan on Thursday to become the world leader in artificial intelligence by 2030. That is not very far away, folks. Aiming to surpass its rivals, I'm going to assume that's us, technologically, and build a domestic industry worth almost $150 billion. They are beyond the platform. They are beyond making things fly and float and swim under the water. They know that the secret sauce, like Don McCormick just talked about, is the AI. It's the stuff that's going to happen inside. This is where we really have got to step up our competitive game. Next, Chris. So one of the things that we were tasked to do by the Secretary of the Navy was, in a memo that he wrote in November 13th of 2015, one of the things he told us to do in our shop was to come up with a Department of the Navy strategic roadmap for unmanned systems. And we accomplished that, the initial segment of that roadmap, with 3 workshops. 2 of the workshops were actually conducted up at Newark They were facilitated by the Gravely group up at the Naval War College, and we couldn't have done it without their help and the expertise that was provided by Inuit. Next, Chris. Now, out of that roadmap, we realized that there was some more work that needed to be done. And so we are in the middle of conducting several workshops, follow-on workshops to our initial segment of this plan. And you can see some of the things that we've been looking at. Continuous learning, acquisition reform. We heard that from Senator Reed. I think we heard it from Don McCormick. We heard it from some of our industry leadership today as well. Doctrine, policy, organization. I actually led the training and personnel one. We did that down in Orlando. Material, leadership and education. Chris led that one down at the National Defense University down in Washington, D.C., and then a facilities workshop. We're really proud of the work, but we're more proud of the participation that we got throughout the Navy, both in uniform and our civilians. Next. Thanks, Chris. Okay, so let's take a look at domains, okay? I don't think anybody can dispute where I have the check marks for the services areas that they are most interested in, okay? I think nobody can dispute that the Air Force does have some domain expertise and interest in both the air and the ground. Army certainly will tell you that they have interest on riverine craft, as an example. But look at the Navy. And I've had to make sure that Congress knows this. The Navy is the only service that will operate in all 4 domains that we consider to be our traditional domains. You could also put space in there if you wanted to. Okay? Hit it, Chris. So I try to bring that out for emphasis. Hit it again, Chris. One more time. Okay. But the Navy's the only one that owns the undersea environment. This is our wheelhouse. This is where we lead for the entire department. We are the only ones investing in the undersea domain as well. And this is where we can really shine, and I think this is the center of excellence, quite frankly, for where we are going to do our unmanned autonomous system development for the undersea environment. Next. So in our roadmap, I was really proud of one of the sections in our roadmap that talked about fundamental design principles. Our roadmap, by the way, is not a catalog of existing programs with static budgets and static schedules. It's really a guide and a strategy that will inform our warfare centers as they go on to develop our systems in the future. But I'd also say for industry, you ought to be paying attention to some of these fundamental design principles. FDECO, the Forward Deployed Energy and Communication Outpost. This is how we are going to manage our systems underwater in the future. Think of 7-Eleven or Wawa underwater, if you'd like, okay, where you're going to get gassed up, you're going to get cleaned up, you're going to receive comm, and you're probably going to be retasked. That's one of the things that's like many of the things that you'll find in our roadmap. Next, Chris. Okay, another one is sophisticated sensors and networks. And now we're really starting to getting into the platforms are, of course, important, but the things that they're going to carry, the data that they extract from their particular environments is really what we're after. What we've got is a couple of depictions, some of them from SINMOC that do everything from environmental data to mission planning data to provide a common operational picture. This is also captured in our roadmap under the fundamental design principles section. Next. So let's just take a look at something that I think most people in here really care about. So it's all about the submarine. Even I will say that now. I know that the submarine is a crown jewel, okay? But I think in the past, at least a knucklehead like me would take a look at the submarine as sort of like operating independently. So if we kind of clear up that picture a little bit, Chris, if you'd hit it once for me, please. Okay, so now let's take a look at the picture that my folks have helped me try to get a grip on. Next, Chris. So this is something that might look sort of LDUUV-ish. Well, how does that future look? How is a submarine going to work with these LDUUVs that are out there? And the LDUUVs might be very capable of, hit it one more time, Chris, how about capturing, how about being able to deploy even smaller vehicles out there? This is the future, one that's completely networked and connected with all these sensors that are going to be out there and available to at a variety of levels. Just a little picture like this could also suggest what our architecture looks like and what our artificial intelligence and autonomy schemes are going to look like. For example, I'd say we certainly have quite a bit of intelligence and intuition on that submarine. But as we go out to these smaller vehicles, we might very well find ourselves wanting the most artificial intelligence out on these smaller vehicles out there, and then wind up reducing that as we get back to the submarine. But you know what? We're still in the early stages of how we're going to employ these things in the future. We don't quite know what that's exactly going to look like. Next, Chris. Okay, so here's one of my favorites, though. Okay, now before Chris hits it, so hold on. All right. Okay. When I was still in uniform, I had a chance to do a panel on sea, air, and space, and I happened to stumble upon a thing called foam block. Anybody ever hear about something called foam block? Yeah, I know you did, Chris. Thanks for that, brother. All right, good to go. Yeah, so I actually think that the foam block thing is kind of a tragedy. What you're not going to get, I suggest that you look at foam block, and there's like a 5-minute video out there, and take a look at it. Now, we've got this one compressed, but foam block was a great idea about how to take standard components to where you could go out and essentially build your own foam. You could choose the display size, choose how much power you wanted to put on there, choose other sort of hardware devices and apps and the software that you wanted to load on your phone. But I'm not so sure that some of the bigger companies out there really wanted that to happen. So this is what foam block kind of advertised as their story. Give it to me, Chris, all right? We really need some sound there, you know what, by the way. But I love that idea of modularity and being able to customize your phone. And I think that that's the future, that modular open architecture that we're going to have in the future, not only for UUVs, but in every single domain where we're going to have unmanned autonomous systems. Next. Okay, so the other piece that I think is really exciting is the fact that these things could very well be expendable. We have actually seen some work being done by the Naval Postgraduate School with some swarming concepts where the cheapest thing out there is actually the air vehicle itself. I care more about the GoPro camera that's on that vehicle than I do about the vehicle itself. That little thing in the lower left is actually a water bottle that somebody turned into a UAV. That lady in the middle there is Dorothy Englehart. She works in our office, and I actually think Chris and I have worked for her. We just didn't know that at the time. We actually sent her down to a workshop. She built that little UAV using 3D printers down at a workshop. And I think that the LD UUV, although that will not be expendable, I think that it could deploy a lot of expendable UUVs in the future. Here's something real quick. You hit that video. There's no sound on this video, by the way. This was done at Antex. And just to give you a quick view about how we could marry up a ground surface vehicle with a water surface vehicle. It's a dramatic footage. I love this, actually. It was... Okay, so here, the ramp, the SUG-V out there, picking up some simulated ordnance, and the dramatic ride back to Newark. Okay, hit it, Chris. By the way, so we've talked a lot about Antex, and I tell you, I can't tell you, I missed the one last year. I made the one this year. It is absolutely spectacular. I tell you what, they did a phenomenal job. And the fact that they were able to coordinate with Panama City, and oh, by the way, you didn't have to work too hard to pay attention, but you had to remind yourself sometimes that the whole scenario that was constructed for Antex, both places were doing a fantastic job of sticking to the scenario, and I thought it really provided a great warfighting context for us out there. One of the things that I walked away with, and I sort of dispute the numbers that I see there, especially on the Newark side here, was I swear to God, I saw way more than just 8 UAVs out there. I went back to everybody and said, hey, I spent some time up at Newark, and I thought I was down at Pax River, to be perfectly honest. And it was fantastic display about how you're going to coordinate air vehicles with surface vehicles with underwater vehicles. I thought they did a fantastic job. Now, my only gripe, by the way, which I'm going to save the gripe. Hey, are the Power Doc guys here? Right there. Stand up, okay? So you've been a spring butt all day anyway, so just, okay, good to go. What you did was a good thing out there. And I go, now you can sit down, sir. I thought that was fabulous, okay. Okay, hit it real quick. Okay, but this is a fabulous idea. You know, we've got these smaller little UAVs. They don't necessarily have the long legs, but if we go back to the way the Marine Corps fought World War II in the early days of sort of island hopping, think if you had these little tiny islands that could be just sprinkled throughout your operating area, where our UAVs could just land, get recharged, quite possibly retasked right there, okay? He already provided Wi-Fi for the area, which I thought was absolutely a fantastic bonus, and then just launch right off. Really just, I mean, that's not what I expected to see when I came out to this Antex, and I thought it was fabulous. Okay, one more time, Chris. Okay? Fantastic, okay. So, but now, since you're here, Brian, and I'm looking right at you, so the only, and I'm gonna say that you were in charge of Antex, okay? Even if I know that's not true, okay? Your people are fantastic, but your young people that were there were absolutely fantastic. And, you know, so there was a young lady out there who spent some time with me talking about the bigger picture. She made sure that I understood what that whole scenario was. I believe her name was Nicole Valancourt. And man, she had it. There was no script there at all. She had it, and she said, hey, what else would you like to see? I mean, it was absolutely fantastic, you know, to sit down with her. And I'm glad Christel Mastro made me start there, by the way, because I was able to think about that scenario at every station I went. By the time I got to the Code 25 tent, way down at the end, I met a young lady there, Victoria Eno, I think was her name, okay? So this is a kid who took Chinese, is taking Chinese in college because electrical engineering isn't quite hard enough, and you know, she needed something to fill her time. These are the kind of people that we're attracting. So next year when we do the photos of like what's going on, okay, it's no things, just people, and then this is what they're doing, okay? And I will be back. All right, next. And that's it. Oh no, it's not it. I'll tell you what, Frank Kelley's vision. Okay, I'm a Marine, I almost blew it. I can only count up to three. I can only count up to three things. This is Frank Kelley's vision for how we're going to use unmanned systems in the future. Next. Okay, they will operate in every domain. Antex proved that, by the way. Okay, Antex proved that last week. Okay, and they scaled it. They scaled it. Absolutely fantastic. Next. Always be an option. I love this picture. Okay, this is operational, by the way. That's a Fire Scout on my left. Okay, with a fleet issue helicopter there on the right. I've actually talked to young fighting sailors that are out there flying and maintaining these things, and that they're like, hey, this is the way we do business. Sometimes in DC, I think we forget that. Okay, and then the last one, okay, and they'll be at their best when they're working with sailors and Marines. And I'll tell you, that is absolutely, the Marines and sailors are going to be the best part of our unmanned systems future. And I really believe that. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
All right, that's a tough act to follow, following Mr. Kelley here, and I also recognize that I am the last speaker before the cocktail hour, so I'll try to keep it, I don't know, relatively quick and save time for some questions before we adjourn and socialize it some more. So thank you for the invitation to participate in this year's SENEDIA Defense Innovation Days. While my schedule has prevented me from attending most events, it is clear and it is clearly evident based on just walking around in the last 30 minutes and meeting most of you, a large number of you, that this is a perfect opportunity for that collaboration and synchronization among key Southern New England stakeholders. As my predecessor, Admiral Jeff Trussler, mentioned last year at this event, and I want to reemphasize that one of the main reasons that UWDC is headquartered in Groton, Connecticut, is so that we can stay closely linked to the Southern New England Undersea Technology Corridor that includes submarines, state-of-the-art submarine training facilities, the Naval Undersea Warfare Center, our government labs, our undersea industry partners, and academic research institutes, including our own Naval War College. So now, as a local, and being stationed in Connecticut and Rhode Island multiple times, allows me to say that I'm a local, even though I have a lower Alabama accent. I also want to thank the corridor for all the next generation developmental work that you're doing through your respective STEM programs for our children, apprenticeship programs, and university collaboratives for technical innovation and workforce development. So for my main remarks, I want to explain to you what UWDC, Undersea Warfighting Development Center, is and what it does, and then how our title of our topic, Innovation and Undersea Technology, both influence and is a key part of our mission. So first and foremost, I need to baseline everyone. UWDC is a global organization that has personnel stationed just about everywhere there's a concentration of undersea warfare forces. Japan, Pearl Harbor, Whidbey Island, San Diego, Jacksonville, Norfolk, Groton, and Naples. And we are headquartered in Groton, Connecticut, not Newport, Rhode Island. Okay? I say that because about 50% of the people I meet ask me how I like living in Rhode Island. And they say, yeah, don't you work at that little place beside the base, that warfare center? And so then lends to my discussion of what the Undersea Warfighting Development Center really does. So, so those personnel, those undersea warfighting professionals that I just mentioned where they're stationed, they are stationed in those places because our mission is to lead undersea superiority and enable sustained fleet combat operations in and from the undersea. That is our fundamental mission. In order to meet that mission, we've established four major lines of effort. And before I get into the lines of effort, every single one of them, every single one that I describe requires collaboration. Collaboration with our fleet stakeholders. Collaboration with our fellow warfighting development centers in the air, surface, information warfare, and expeditionary domains, if you will. It requires collaboration with our academic institutions, with industry, and our allies and partners. These efforts also require a robust assessment process that unashamedly reveals gaps and provides internal and external feedback to improve our operations, our doctrine, and our training. And we must innovate. We must innovate to look for better ways to accomplish our mission, to execute our lines of effort. Innovation is the core of tactical development as we seek to understand how we use both existing capabilities to their best and fullest extent and how we will best employ future capabilities that Frank just talked about, a large number of those future capabilities that we're looking at. It's our job to understand how to develop those CONOPS and how to best employ them once we get them in the water and get to play with them, right? So let's talk about the four major lines of effort at UWDC. First and foremost, it should be blindingly obvious, but develop doctrine, concept of operations, and TTPs, tactics, training, and procedures. Tactics, techniques, and procedures for undersea warfare. This one, no surprise, and basically we write and manage doctrine for undersea platforms at all levels, from the tactical to the strategic, if you will. And for carrier strike groups and theater ASW commands at the integrated operational level. That one might be a surprise to a few of you, that how we do integrated ASW for our carrier strike groups and our theater ASW commands. And this line of effort is guided by tactical roadmaps where we have distilled prioritized gaps in our doctrine and training and then attack those gaps. Set up our exercises, set up our modeling and simulation, set up our hypothesis of how we want to solve those problems. The second line of effort is to assess undersea warfare performance and warfighting readiness. So this includes an assessment and certification of all theater ASW commands and carrier strike groups, along with analysis of worldwide ASW and submarine operations. And frankly, this is where the majority of the gaps get identified, in that assessment and analysis realm that we're responsible for. And in those gaps, then we kind of break them down to, are they technology capability needs that we have, or we will then pass those up to our requirement sponsor and resource sponsor and feed them into the POM process, or are they doctrine gaps that we are solely responsible for, or are they training, where it's a team effort? The third line of effort is training for undersea platforms and integrated fleet operations. There's a little nuance to this one. So we are at UWDC chartered to conduct integrated ASW training for our theater ASW staffs and our carrier strike groups. Our doctrine is what informs our undersea platform training that goes through our TICOMs, the respective ISIC, and our submarine learning center. Right. I go back to that collaboration of why UWDC is where it is in Groton. Use the expertise of the Submarine Learning Center there at Groton. And then finally, to advance undersea capability, wholeness, and synchronization. Here we lead the ASW Fleet Collaborative Team in developing the Fleet ASW IPL, Integrated Priority Capabilities List. That feeds the POM process in identifying those capability gaps and those .MLPF gaps back to our requirement and resource sponsors. We also lead the Submarine Requirements Technology Group, where those tactical level capability gaps are identified and fed into our swiftest process in improving the combat system, sonar systems, navigation systems, right now, predominantly on our submarines, in the future on some of our unmanned systems, and bleeding out into our surface and aviation community brethren in ASW. And we work with partners like all of you in the development and operational utility for new and innovative technologies. So that's what we do. That's a very broad overview of what we do, and when I get done, we sit down. If there's more questions that come up, or at the cocktail hour, we can talk over the beer or so. But you know, how we fit into the broader, and how we fit into the broader Navy construct. So we're on the TTP side. Frank is on the kind of the policy side. SecNav, and in between is our requirement and resource sponsors. All right. But it's all a big feedback loop that we're all constantly in coordination and collaboration together with, right? So in closing, I want to give you a little bit higher level perspective. What should be driving, and you've probably heard a number of these same thoughts earlier in the day that unfortunately I wasn't here for, and last night with Senator Reed. So what should drive our collective pursuit of innovation and rapid undersea development and delivery should be a sense of urgency. Unless you've been living in a cave for the last couple of years, you should be well aware that our adversaries are testing us each and every day. All you have to do is read the news. It's out there, right? And most of you in this audience have heard speakers like Frank, our CNO, and others in the maritime design and the future Navy expounding upon that very serious threat. So there's broad agreement that the current security environment is faster paced, more complex, and increasingly competitive. The pace, some argue the pace is exponential, and more of our challenges are multi-domain, trans-regional, and multifunctional. This exponential and complex dynamic is playing out on the seas and under the seas. Therefore, the demand for undersea capability will continue to grow rapidly. driven by adversaries capable of contesting our maritime forces. This demand, coupled with that sense of urgency, should drive coordinated Navy, research, industry, and technology developmental efforts to deliver the required warfighting capabilities to go back to meet the original mission, which is enable sustained combat operations from and in the undersea. Moving forward, we must aggressively evaluate all ideas and concepts that have the potential to positively impact undersea warfare, looking hard at improving legacy development and acquisition processes, leveraging emerging concepts such as big data analytics, advanced gaming techniques, artificial intelligence, and leveraging cross-domain enablers in order to become more efficient, i.e. faster, more responsive, i.e. quicker, and better informed, smarter. So with that, thank you again for the opportunity to participate, and Frank and I look forward to any questions that you may have. Thank you. Sir, I guess I'm moderating this thing.
So the Naval Undersea Warfighting Development Center has been in existence longer than the other ones, except for Strike U. But you were the first ones that really that came into this new paradigm. It's been about 4 years now, or 5 years, 2 years.
2 years.
Okay. Seems longer than that. You said you're measuring effectiveness. So has there been a change in effectiveness as a result of the NUWDC existence? And is that showing up in the results of exercises and JTFXs at sea?
Mike, thank you for that. Let me just clarify a couple things in your question or response to your question. So Strike U, so Nautic has been around for, as you're aware, for quite a while. Initially established post-Vietnam War, I believe. And then 2 years ago, the Navy formally decided to shift from things that were called centers of excellence to warfighting development centers. And so UWDC and the surface and mine, SMITIC, basically stood up at the same time, and Nautic essentially changed their name, right? So your second part was, how are we doing, right? That's right. What is the outcome, right? And so a couple of sound bites for you. When UWDC was stood up, the previous year, the submarine force had done a total of 6 tactical development exercises in the previous year. And tactical development exercises is what you use to help prove your hypothesis in developing new doctrine and TTPs. 6 of them, and 4 of them were things that were that you're never going to go away from, which is submarine command course operations. So you could argue that really independently, UWDC only did 2. So when UWDC was stood up, part of the direction from the boss, my boss, Vice Admiral Tafalo, was re-energize submarine tactical development. And Jeff Trussler, my predecessor, started down that path, and I've picked up from there. So the bottom line is we did 24 tactical development exercises last year in 2016, which is a 300% increase from the year before. This year we're on pace to do somewhere close to 30 tactical development exercises. And we've revamped the way that our process that we get tactical doctrine out to the fleet. Because once again, ultimately our goal is so the fleet is better prepared to fight the war. They have to have the most up-to-date tactical doctrine. And I could just, I don't have the numbers memorized, but we're pumping publications and urgent changes out much faster, really based on the input of many more tactical development exercises. And we've done a number of things to change the process and how we do those to make it more expedient, more innovative, so that we can get them out faster. But, you know, bottom line is that's an average of 1 every 2 weeks. So they're doing good work. And that tactical stuff is all, it's going at the integrated level also. The pubs are moving out based on our tech dev X's. But we always have room to improve on our lessons learned and our feedback process. So hopefully that helps, Mike. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Admiral, the function of your cadets, are they analysts? Are they foreign area experts? Are they instructors? You named quite a bit of worldwide footprint. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, sir. So first comment, I do not have debts. I have UWDC San Diego, I have UWDC Norfolk, I have UWDC Pearl Harbor. It's important, and there's a reason behind that madness. Because UWDC was only stood up 2 years ago, and they came from existing organizations in MOC, the Tactical Analysis Group, the Arctic Submarine Lab, things like that. And part of my effort to break down some of those old stovepipes, I banned the term debt. So that's the first one for you. Second, it's kind of a mix, right? The beauty of this job and working at the integrated level with carrier strike groups and theater ASW commands is my team is a very heavily undersea warfighting professional base. P-8s, MH-60 Romeos, destroyers, submariners, intel analysts that were focused on undersea warfare, and reservists. So I have a mix of just about all of what you said. Reconstruction and analysis and assessment is predominantly your classic analyst. The tactical development writers are more operators, to kind of bin them in that category. And then we have a large number of reservists that also work for us that get taught the course first, theater ASW, let's say, go out to the fleet, qualify as battle watch captain or theater ASW watch officer, and then come back and teach. So I use the reservists for teaching along with active duty personnel. Hopefully that helped. Thank you. All right, Frank needs a question. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Animal.
Yes, sir.
The question's for you.
Okay, all right.
Thanks. My question is, if you can comment on, with this multiple-fold increase in TAC DevXs, are you able to conduct those in deployed areas, one, and then two, are you able to get, say, target services from allies, which might be more representative of the threats, to develop those tactics and prove them out?
Yes, sir. Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the short answer is yes to both. And one of the things that we've done, kind of, once again, innovative to try and speed and accelerate our tactical development process, is we got the forward operational commanders buy-in to do tactical development exercises forward, i.e. in the water, that, you know, they need to do their real both peacetime and warfighting missions in. Taking that bite, and it's paid dividends. Both here and forward deployed, a lot of our allies and partners are willing players in tactical development. I would say we also have a program run out of my boss, Vice Admiral Tafalo at Sub 4, where the diesel exchange DESI program, a diesel program where we'll bring diesels up from South America, whether it's, you know, Peru, Chile, and use them. And we'll use them both in submarine tactical development and in carrier strike group tactical development. So it's paying dividends. Thank you. Yes, sir.
It's a question for Secretary Kelley. No, this is a real good question, right? So you identified those 4 areas of air, land, or air, ground, sea, and subsea. As a Marine, are you interested in amphibious unmanned systems? And is there some specific interest in the Marine Corps on that?
So Jessica Schaefer, right? You were actually in charge of Antex, okay? So I'm going to ask you a question. What is the plural for Antex, okay? So Antex is okay, so before the one that was done out here a couple of weeks ago, there was actually one done in May, I think. Was it May, Chris? April, sorry, my bust. Okay, out of Camp Pendleton. And that one completely featured a Marine Corps scenario coming ashore. And so it's always a shame when when the narrator starts off with, imagine if you will, okay, that there's no man in that double AV, okay? And I know that there's a couple of people in here that have actually ridden in a double AV, okay? But it's really hard to imagine that when you can see that human head, sticking out of there. But one of the scenarios was very similar to that video that I showed you with the autonomous surface craft that deployed the unmanned. And I wish I had that picture, but the AAV would come ashore. And then so what we're used to seeing when the AAV comes ashore is that the door will drop and you'll get, at least 13 to 14 Marines will pop out the back end of that thing. Well, a much larger UUV came out of the end to do some beach reconnaissance. And then we had another octocopter come in, and the octocopter and that ground mobile robot were talking together, passing data back and forth. And so there's just a scenario for you. It was a pretty good event, and I bet you there's some some video out there that you could take a look at. There were all sorts of things, lots of UAVs that you can imagine, lots of surface craft, by the way. Some skidoos out there without people on them that were raging ashore. The biggest problem with the unmanned, and there were lots of unmanned underwater vehicles that participated in that event. The problem with those things is, once they submerge, it's like, okay, there they go, and you can't see them, and they don't get their credit. We got to find some way to give the UUVs a kind of real-time credit that UAVs get, because they're easy to spot. So yes, we are. By the way, when I say we are, I mean it's with the Department of the Navy. General Neller, who is the commandant, he is decisively engaged. His deputy commandants are all decisively engaged. And oh, by the way, unmanned air vehicles used to be the purview of the deputy commandant for aviation. The deputy commandant for installations and logistics is the most dominant figure in the Marine Corps right now in pushing autonomy and unmanned systems in the Marine Corps right now. So that's a long yes. Roger.
We'll get a.
So I know this sounds like it's over the top, and I'm really pushing this people thing here. But so by the way, I've had to testify in front of Congressman Langevin before. And we've had to make sure that people understand, hey, the whole thing is not like runaway AI, where we'll be bowing before our evil robotic overlords. It's all about how people are going to drive this thing. And so we've been on a campaign to try to get people off of that. The reason for him is because he's the most dynamic personality right now, and I know that one's going to get me in trouble. And Lee Hudson, please don't dime me out on that one, all right? But he's dynamic, and you know what? You need dynamic, decisively engaged leadership to kind of push this stuff. So that's why. But General Neller's no slouch either. You can quote me on that one, okay? All right. So he's decisively engaged as well.
General Kelley, given the elimination of the Navy Unmanned Office and the various unmanned systems that are existing, who's coordinating them? How are they integrated? And in particular, the undersea world, which is the sole domain of the Navy.
Yeah. So, Pete, thanks for biting on that one, by the way. I really appreciate that one. You don't put stuff up there that you don't want people to pay attention to. So you guys remember the movie The Right Stuff? And when Gordo Cooper's like driving down, you know, in the desert with his wife, he says, "Who's the greatest fighter pilot you ever saw?" And what's he say? You're looking at him, okay? So I think you're looking at him right now. I think that's my job until somebody tells me to stop. And, you know, we get great support. But I'll tell you what, on a personal level, I miss N99 in a big, big way. Bob Guerrier was a tremendous spokesman for the unmanned operational component. Tremendous credibility out there. But I will also tell you that there are people that still sort of feel like this is their job to do. So when N99 disbanded and they went back to the more traditional layout of the high nines, they still feel that this is something that they're responsible to do. So remember those workshops that I showed you, those follow-on workshops? We call it wedding planning in the shop, by the way. When we have these workshops, the first one, it was chirping crickets. We literally, hey, we'll pay you to come to these things. By the time we had the last one, we had people literally calling up and saying, hey, do you have a seat for me? I want to participate. And I would say it's still pretty vibrant, Chris. I'm not asking you to make a career move here. But there is a large group of people, and it grows in terms of wanting to really foster this community. And it's very, very popular, especially with the young people. By the way, we did a study with CNA to kind of take a look at some of the cultural impediments. I was really proud of the Center for Naval Analysis to do this study. And I'll tell you what, they did an awesome job. And the reason I asked them to do it was I called it message in a bottle. I said, whoever is going to become the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Unmanned Systems, that poor fill in the blank is going to need to know what he's up against, you know, or her, what they're up against when they come in. And the demographics, by the way, is the young people get it. They absolutely think that this is the Navy that they're going to join and that they will be swimming alongside these things. They will be in submarines and unmanned vehicles operating together. Certainly on the aviation community, they felt that they would be, you know, that they would be managing swarms of smaller craft out there. They absolutely get it. Our very senior leadership also gets it because they see the potential out there as well. We've got a group there in the middle that needs some convincing, but I think that they're slowly coming around. I will also say that I really, and this is all of our warfare centers, but I will tell you that our most important partner, and this is not a shameless career move, has been Newport. Now they were smart. When it came time for us to stand up, they put a mole in our shop, and that was Chris Del Mastro right there, okay? That guy became my go-to guy, okay? And by the way, in terms of developing your folks, Del Mastro has just gotten promoted, code 40, and I think that's worth a round of applause. That's how good the people are that they're putting on, that Newark's putting on this, which I think is super impressive. Developing young people, promoting the people within, and actually helping us out a great deal in terms of trying to do our job in the building. Thanks for asking that. Yes, sir.
Do you envision sometime in the future that autonomous vehicles will have, that weapons capability with autonomous tools and engagement for weapons?
Okay, Admiral, thanks for asking that, by the way. Okay. I think they're here. I think they're here. No, by the way, don't make the mistake that not you, by the way, but some guy came up to me and said, it'll never happen. I said, it may just not happen in America, okay, but it's going to happen. And I think we need to be prepared for that. And I think, by the way, I think West Bush talked about some of these really pricklier issues that are out there with respect to unmanned systems. And the folks that have engaged on our workshops, by the way, we've had some tremendous participation with people that probably have degrees in philosophy, with lawyers that do rules of engagement type of thing, and they've tried to attack this issue because we are going to come up against it. Now, my personal feeling, when I was still in uniform, one of the first things we had a chance to do out of Carter Rock is, and I can't remember what UVAS stands for, Chris. Nobody does anymore, but it was the first group that we had the technical community get together and start talking about where we were going to go. And I said, I think that getting out in front of unmanned systems is a moral imperative for our side, because there's no way that we're going to put human beings, our airmen, soldiers, sailors, and Marines up against a competitor that's going to probably put weapons, on these things. So, and we heard it from our congressman. We heard it from Senator Reid. We heard it from Langevin. We don't want a fair fight. Okay, that means you got to be all in. All right, sir.
Frank, this one's for you.
Okay.
So cultural impediments, you mentioned that earlier. I think I'll throw our aviation colleagues under the bus. We've got a big problem with the flight clearance process. Can you talk to that a little bit and how that can be streamlined, made a little bit easier for experimentation?
Yeah. So this is an easy one for me. We were talking about the flight clearance thing a little earlier. The good news is, Dave, you said it was a problem, right? Okay. I did not say it was a problem yet. Okay. So but I think more importantly, that Admiral Grosskлагs has addressed it head on. And so it goes back to this decisive, engaged leadership. And I don't want to get out ahead of Admiral Grosskлагs, but I do believe that Admiral Grosskлагs has directed NavAir that flight clearances will not be a problem, and we will be seen. The NavAir, will be seen as helpers in this regard. And I think we're breaking out of that right now. I've got a young lady in the shop right now, Ryan Fitzgerald, who pleaded and begged with me. She goes, "Sir," she came from NavAir, by the way. She's an incredible engineer that was working on the X-47B program, and she came up to us because she thought that she could be helpful, and she certainly is. Well, she wanted to attack this flight clearance issue, and she pleaded with me not to get involved. She goes, "You'll only ruin it for the rest of us." So being that she's so smart, I said, "Okay, Ryan, you got it. You just let me know when you want me to get engaged." And so far, she has not called. And oh, by the way, I will tell you, the NavAir guys have done a spectacular job of participating with Ryan's group that she set up. It's not a done deal. I don't want to make it all sound like it's a bed of roses right now. But I think everybody's progressing in the right direction. And when Chris did his leadership and education workshop, we had some folks from NavAir that actually took the flight clearance issue head on and said, "Hey, we do have an issue. We're going to get through it." So I think we're on the right path. On the right path there. Sir? Yes, sir.
So how are the resources given allocating resources?
Still, so I would, I'd say it's still pretty early. We heard all the other budget issues that we have right now with, continuing resolution, since we got in there. But, so the money thing's going to come, sir. I think it's what we look for is more like as the attitude. So when Bill Mers had N97, when he was still in N97, I guess, one of the things that I looked for, by the way, was when would you necessarily know that we have normalized our approach to unmanned systems? And for me, that was when, it's just part of our routine, when we don't necessarily get so excited about them, when I see them as part of our warfighting plans in the future. Mers looked at me one day, he said, "Hey, Frank," he goes, "I want you to know, I don't have an unmanned underwater vehicle strategy. I have an undersea strategy that incorporates," so I would say, I don't know if Mers is ahead of everybody else, but that's the attitude that I typically see with everybody else. Bullet Miller in N98 right now, he is fully engaged in making sure that that unmanned systems are incorporated into the way that he does business. CNO was just up here 2 weeks ago to get a just dedicated brief on the unmanned system portfolio. I would consider that to be, that's pretty good. So I feel pretty good. I don't expect to see it overnight like all this, like a windfall of cash, come down and just devoted completely to unmanned systems. That wouldn't be the right mix, right? So I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty happy with the sponsorship, to be honest. Is that good? You happy with that? Okay, all right.
Okay, I think we can continue this down over the drinks that the Admiral suggested a little bit later. Help me thank the gentlemen for their time and insights this afternoon.